children, in this video we are going to see reproduction in plants part 5. This is the last part in this chapter, and in part 5 we are going to discuss about sexual reproduction in plants. And children, in part 4 we studied about pollination. What is pollination? What are the two types of pollination? That is self-pollination and cross-pollination. I told sexual reproduction undergoes two processes. One is pollination, another one is fertilization. In part 4 we studied about pollination. In part 5 we are going to study about fertilization. Before that, I want to recall about pollination. What is pollination? Pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. With the help of pollinating agents, pollination takes place. And pollination is followed by the process called fertilization. After the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, pollen grains fuses with the egg, that is pollen grain male gamete fuses with the egg female gamete. This process is called fertilization. So what is called fertilization? The process of fusion of male gamete with female gamete is called fertilization. In case of plants, male gamete is called pollen grain and female gamete is called ovum. So the fusion of pollen grains with egg is called fertilization in plants. So after the fusion or after fertilization, zygote is formed. So zygote is a fusion product or fertilization product. So zygote is formed by the fusion of pollen grain and egg. So from zygote, embryo is formed. Zygote is a fusion product of male gamete and female gamete, and from zygote, embryo is formed. So this is fertilization. Now we will see process of fertilization, how fertilization takes place. And in plants, fertilization takes place after pollination. And children, this diagram explains you about process of fertilization. Children, I told pollination is a transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma. And see, this structure is called pistil, that is carpel, which is a female reproductive part which contains stigma, style and ovary. Stigma, it is the topmost part of a female reproductive part which is sticky in nature, which helps in sticking or which helps in attracting the landing pollen grain. And this is style, which is a tube-like structure which connects stigma and ovary is the bottom part which consists of egg inside. And this is male reproductive part called stamen, which consists of bag-like structure called anther and a tube-like structure called filament. And anther, this bag-like structure consists of pollen grains, that is male gamete. Pistil consists of female gamete. Now by the process of pollination, the pollen grains, male reproductive gamete fuses with the female reproductive gamete. See, we will see how it is taking place. This is anther, that is bag-like structure when it get matures, or after maturation of anther get burst and the pollen grains escape from the anther, and it flows freely in the air and through pollinating agents. I told in previous videos, wind, water, insects, human and other animals or pollinating agents which helps in transfer of pollen grains to stigma. And through pollinating agents, this pollen grain stick on the stigma. This happens in the same kind. This pollination or transfer takes place in the flower which belongs to the same kind. The flower will accept, or stigma will accept only the pollen grains from the same kind of flower. So through pollinating agents, the pollen grains stick on the stigma. I told stigma is sticky in nature, so this pollen grain easily gets sticks in the stigma. And here germination of stigma takes place by this pollen grains develop a tube called pollen tube towards the ovary, that too towards the egg. This process of movement of pollen tube towards the egg is called chemotaxis. Chemotaxis means, chemo means chemical, taxis means movement. Then what is chemotaxis? The movement of pollen tube towards the chemical signal produced by the egg is called chemotaxis. So this process or this movement of pollen tube towards the egg is called chemotaxis. So pollen grain, after landing on the stigma, it develops a tube called pollen tube. This pollen tube grows towards the egg and it reaches the towards the ovary and reaches the egg. Through this pollen tube, the gamete pollen grain, that is male gamete nucleus, travels along with the pollen tube and it reaches the egg, and the nucleus of a pollen grain fuses with the nucleus of an egg. This fusion, this process of fusion is called fertilization. As I told already, the process of fusion of male gamete with female gamete is called fertilization. Here nucleus of pollen grain is a male gamete, nucleus of egg is a female gamete. Fusion takes place. Now zygote is formed. Zygote is a fusion product, and from zygote embryo is formed. And children, after this, that is post fertilization takes place. That is, after fertilization, what are the changes takes place? After fertilization or after formation of zygote, what happens? See, this is the ovary, and inside the ovary, ovule is present. Ovule protects the egg. So this is ovary. Ovary consists of ovule inside. Ovule consists of egg or ovum inside. This egg is protected by ovule, first layer, and ovary, the bottom of the female reproductive part, that is pistil. And after fertilization, that egg and pollen grain fuse and zygote is formed, and this ovary is converted into fruit. So the ripened ovary is called fruit. So these are the post fertilization changes. So what are post fertilization changes, or what are the changes takes place after fertilization? Ovary is converted into fruit. Ovary is transformed into fruit, and ovule, which is present inside the ovary, is transformed into seed coat. That is this zygote, that fusion product embryo, zygote is converted into seed, which contains the embryo which give rise to new plant. So these are the post fertilization changes. Ovary is converted into fruit. That is, ovary is a ripened fruit is a ripened ovary. Ovule is transformed into seed coat, and this fusion product zygote is transformed into embryo, which contains all the one which have ability to give rise to young ones. So seeds give rise to young ones. So I told, through sexual reproduction, flowers are the reproductive part which have ability to give rise to young ones by the fusion of male and female gametes. So male and female product, that is part which is present in the flower, either it is unisexual flower or bisexual flower. Unisexual flower, either one reproductive part is present. In bisexual flower, both the reproductive part is present. So through this for sexual reproduction, fusion takes place. So flower plays an important role in sexual reproduction. So from the flowers, fruit is formed, and from the fruit seed is formed, and through the seed new plant is we obtain new plant. So this happens by the fusion of male and female gamete. So this is called sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, no fusion of male and female gamete takes place. Directly from the vegetative parts, that is root, stem and leaves, new young ones or new plant is formed, and through this sexual reproduction, that is especially through the flowers, by the fusion fruit is formed, and from the fruit seed is formed, from the seed new plant is formed. As I told already, through vegetative propagation we can bear a fruit or the plant grows fast, but through sexual reproduction the bearing of fruit or the plant will grow very slowly, and it takes more time to yield a fruit. And children, this is about sexual reproduction in plant, and this is the last part of this chapter. That is part 5 is the last part of this chapter, reproduction in plants. And children, this chapter is completed. Bye students.